Afghanistan. All right. So as Trump made his big speech, I heard a different speech than everybody else heard. Okay. I heard him say something different than everybody else heard. And, you know, the Democrats want to claim that, oh, this is just more Obama because he's going to send in some troops, but not a lot of troops. They're speculating it's around 4,000 troops, which is not going to make much of a difference. So it's kind of that Obama thing. Remember when he said Obama got everything wrong? I mean, when I was in Afghanistan and I came back, and when I came back, I was listening to Obama's speech, and he was saying, you know, the war in Iraq is the wrong war. We've got to win the war in Afghanistan. And I thought, no, that's exactly backwards. We have won the war in Iraq. We have to stick with that. And we can't win the war in Afghanistan. We cannot win a war in Afghanistan for the simple reason is there is no Afghanistan. Afghanistan is a big piece of property with a lot of different tribes on it. Most of those tribes fighting over like a rape that happened 300 years ago in legend. That's, you know, they're feuding over that stuff. I mean, it really is a savage land. There's no taming it. They call it the graveyard of empires for a reason. So on the Democrats are saying, oh, yeah, it's just more Obama, which is nonsense. Obama sent in these troops and then said, oh, and by the way, here's the date we're going to pull them out. So that was really helpful because all the Taliban is there for good. The Taliban lives there. And so they disappear in the winter. They come back in the spring. They disappear when we're there. If we tell them when we're going to leave, they just wait. And everybody knows that if they help us, if the villagers help the Americans, they know when the Taliban comes back, they're going to kill them, you know. So it's a very, very difficult situation, impossible country to tame. So the Democrats hear him saying he's more Obama. Lindsey Graham looked like a pixie. You know, he was so happy because he thinks it's now going to be Vietnam and we're just going to keep pouring people in there. Although, of course, H.R. McMaster literally wrote the book about that and he's not going to do it. But let's take a look at the speech piece by piece and talk about what it was he was really saying. Just to start with and get this out of the way, his opening was an address about Charlottesville. I thought it was really nice. Let us hear this cut number one.
The soldier understands what we as a nation too often forget, that a wound inflicted upon a single member of our community is a wound inflicted upon us all. When one part of America hurts, we all hurt. And when one citizen suffers an injustice, we all suffer together. Loyalty to our nation demands loyalty to one another. Love for America requires love for all of its people. When we open our hearts to patriotism, there is no room for prejudice, no place for bigotry, and no tolerance for hate. The young men and women we send to fight our wars abroad deserve to return to a country that is not at war with itself at home. We cannot remain a force for peace in the world if we are not at peace with each other.
Very, very graceful, because that's appealing to the same, you know, the right-wingers who love the military, who understand they're sending them out there. It is separating them off from the Nazis and the haters and the creeps who go out and, you know, with their white supremacy nonsense. And I thought that was very gracefully done. Of course, the left's never going to let up about this. Their idea is to make him so toxic that people are embarrassed to support him. And that's probably happening. That could backfire on them when the polls don't show his support. You know, he's going to be so unpopular that he gets reelected. So the setup here is there are four ideas of American power, okay? They're always in play, but very much in play. There was Obama's idea, which was basically America is a blundering bully, an imperialist. We've committed all these sins. We owe everybody an apology. So we've got to pull out. We shouldn't do anything unless we're somehow this angelic force for good that pays no attention to its own interests, as if we weren't a country on our own. There's the Steve Bannon idea, which is screw all that. We're out of here. This is now an economic battle. The Chinese are taking advantage of us. The globalization is weakening us. Free trade is weakening us, and globalization and the Chinese are taking advantage of all that, and they're going to kill us. We shouldn't be fighting anywhere except in our immediate interest. Then there's Lindsey Graham and John McCain. If you see it, shoot it. You know, that's the Superman role where we're supposed to patrol the skies, and anywhere there's an injustice, we fly down and save the day. And finally, there's what I think is the realistic idea that we are the greatest power for good on earth. We have to be the police. We have to take care of things, but we're also a country, and we cannot maintain the Pax Americana unless we pay attention to our own interests. So we muddle along. We do what has to be done. When there's a fight we can fix, we fix it. When there's not, we don't. We don't spend all our money doing this stuff, but we do what we have to do. Obviously Afghanistan was where the 9/11 attackers came from, even though they were inspired by the Saudis and they were all Saudis. Somehow that never comes up because there's enough people on the take from Saudi Arabia that nobody wants to fight with them. So that's the thing. So Trump came in kind of with the Bannon thing. Let us get out of here. Let's get out of here. And he talked about that he was convinced by his generals that was not going to work. Here's cut number 2.
I share the American people's frustration. I also share their frustration over a foreign policy that has spent too much time, energy, money, and most importantly, lives, trying to rebuild countries in our own image instead of pursuing our security interests above all other considerations. That is why, shortly after my inauguration, I directed Secretary of Defense Mattis and my national security team to undertake a comprehensive review of all strategic options in Afghanistan and South Asia. My original instinct was to pull out, and historically, I like following my instincts. But all my life, I've heard that decisions are much different when you sit behind the desk in the Oval Office. In other words, when you're President of the United States. So I studied Afghanistan in great detail and from every conceivable angle.
Now, this to me was one of the most stunning moments in the speech, because this is the first time I've ever heard Trump say, I was wrong, I changed my mind. It's the first time I've ever heard him say it. It fits in with my idea of Trump as a guy who learns stuff, a guy who comes around, who understands that he figures out the field of play as he goes. It was a modest statement. And when I say that about Donald Trump, it almost sticks in my throat. It was a statement of you don't know everything before you know anything. And he's changed. So what did he learn? I mean, what did he learn? First thing he learned, which I think he already knew, was that really Obama messed up this situation in the Middle East beyond anything. And when he wanted to pull out, he looked at what happened when Obama did that in Iraq, and he did it for political reasons, and it was a disaster. This is cut 3.
A hasty withdrawal would create a vacuum that terrorists, including ISIS and Al-Qaeda, would instantly fill, just as happened before September 11th. And as we know, in 2011, America hastily and mistakenly withdrew from Iraq. As a result, our hard-won gains slipped back into the hands of terrorist enemies. Our soldiers watched as cities they had fought for and bled to liberate, and were occupied by a terrorist group called ISIS. The vacuum we created by leaving too soon gave safe haven for ISIS to spread, to grow, recruit, and launch attacks. We cannot repeat in Afghanistan the mistake our leaders made in Iraq.
Plus, so that's Obama done for. And he also talked about, well, actually, we should go on a little bit. But he also talked about these incredible rules of engagement that drive the military crazy, that you can't shoot a terrorist unless he has a little sign on his head that says, I am a terrorist, and he's pointing a gun at you and has a suicide belt. They just have to let these guys walk by. That stuff is over. And he talked about the fact that he's now going to make new rules. And I'll bet the military is not allowed to applaud when the commander-in-chief is making his speech about an official commander-in-chief speech, but I'll bet this one just really lifted their hearts. This is cut number 9.
My administration will ensure that you, the brave defenders of the American people, will have the necessary tools and rules of engagement to make this strategy work, and work effectively, and work quickly. I have already lifted restrictions the previous administration placed on our warfighters that prevented the Secretary of Defense and our commanders in the field from fully and swiftly waging battle against the enemy. Micromanagement from Washington, D.C. does not win battles. They are won in the field, drawing upon the judgment and expertise of wartime commanders and frontline soldiers, acting in real time with real authority and with a clear mission to defeat the enemy.
Okay, so he's just slapped Obama around from like one end of the room to the other, as Obama so well deserved. I mean, really, all this stuff was political for Obama. He had no military strategy. Lindsey Graham, I'm not a big Lindsey Graham fan, but he said the General Obama was a lousy general. And he, that's a really good point. And one of the things that Trump is talking about is he's not going to manage this from the White House. He's going to let his generals manage it and the commanding officers manage it from the field. But he also took W to task for the ambition of his vision. They had that Bush freedom agenda. And this is the other part of this that he is not signing on. I mean, obviously, Steve Bannon his head is probably exploding over the fact that he's staying in Afghanistan, but he's not staying on to nation build. So this is cut number 7. Before you play cuts number 7, the thing is, Trump was known to have his generals in there and say to them, what does victory look like? And that is the important part of this speech. What does victory look like? Because everybody makes these big generalized statements and, we're just going to have to stay there and we're going to kill people, blah, blah, blah. But what does victory look like? And here he starts to talk about that. This is 7.
Ultimately, it is up to the people of Afghanistan to take ownership of their future, to govern their society, and to achieve an everlasting peace. We are a partner and a friend, but we will not dictate to the Afghan people how to live or how to govern their own complex society. We are not nation building again. We are killing terrorists.
Okay, so that is the mission, to kill terrorists, and that's very different than what we were doing before. Okay, so the mission is to kill terrorists. We're not to nation build. And here is the thing about this. I mean, there's all kinds of talk about what went on behind the scenes, that the military wanted 50,000 troops to go in. Trump is not talking about how many troops go in. The rumors are 4,000, but he won't talk about it. They say they wanted 50,000 troops. They say somebody floated the idea of sending in mercenaries, which is truly, truly a bad idea. But Trump is not doing any of that. So is he just doing the Obama thing of sending more people in there to bleed? And I don't think he is, because the most shocking thing that he said, the most startling thing that he said, was the thing that he said about Pakistan. I mean, Pakistan is our theoretical ally, but they're not. They have been harboring these guys, and he called them out. This is cut number 8.
The Pakistani people have suffered greatly from terrorism and extremism. We recognize those contributions and those sacrifices. But Pakistan has also sheltered the same organizations that try every single day to kill our people. We have been paying Pakistan billions and billions of dollars. At the same time, they are housing the very terrorists that we are fighting. But that will have to change. And that will change immediately. Okay. I do not picture Donald Trump as a guy who 2 years from now is going to be still pouring in troops like Johnson did in Vietnam, Kennedy did in Vietnam, still sending troops into this maelstrom that cannot be won. That is not the way I picture what he's talking about. He's calling out Pakistan because he realizes there's only one solution, and that's a diplomatic solution. Somehow the government has to be patched together that is strong enough to survive the Taliban. And that means that India and Pakistan have to get involved. Now, India has helped, but he called them out too. He wants them to help more. Pakistan has been playing a double game, and he called them out, and he said we were sending them billions and billions of dollars. That's a genuine threat. He may even want Russia in there. The press has made it so hard for him to deal with Russia. I don't know if he can, but I think what he's announcing here is what they call a diplomatic surge. I do not think he's announcing a military surge. I don't think he's depending on the military to go in there and continue to muddle through forever. I don't think he's saying we're going to send in more and more and more troops. I think what he is saying is they have got to fix this on their own and put this government back together. And meanwhile, we're going to
to be killing these people like bats out of hell. Get prepared. Here's what you can be prepared for. You can be prepared for stories suddenly about atrocities committed by American soldiers. You can be start to see stories about American soldiers coming home in boxes, because remember, there were no stories about that when Obama was killing people for no reason, getting Americans killed for no reason in Afghanistan. But now that he's going over there with an idea, with a thought of how he can get out, suddenly we're going to see that coming on. And I suppose we're going to trust Trump not to panic and to look the press in the eye and say, you never covered this before, because the one thing about Trump is there's one thing we know he loves, and this is cut number 10.
Our troops will fight to win. We will fight to win. From now on, victory will have a clear definition: attacking our enemies, obliterating ISIS, crushing al-Qaeda, preventing the Taliban from taking over Afghanistan, and stopping mass terror attacks against America before they emerge.
So I think what we were seeing last night, and Trump couldn't say this because if he says it, then he's doing the same thing Obama did, which is he's telegraphing his hand. I think what we saw last night was Trump announcing a diplomatic surge, a strong attempt to solve this problem and get us out of there through diplomatic means while we kill terrorists like we are crossing the River Rhine, while we kill them with a new commitment and a new unrestricted way of fighting, which I think would be a good thing. It was a good speech. It was a vague speech. Everybody kind of noticed the next morning, like they said, well, good speech, but what did he say? I think what he said, it's what he didn't say that was actually the policy. I think what he didn't say is that we are going in there for a diplomatic surge. I do not believe he's going to keep pouring people in there forever. We can't win. We can't win not because the military isn't great. We can't win because we're not going to spend the blood and treasure that it would take to win an open, savage country.